I think that there was this need that hadn't been fulfilled in the community that people really grasped onto the second it started, and it grew really fast. So it's been really cool seeing what it has grown into. And the coolest part, I think, is seeing different people like want to volunteer and step up to help with things, whether it's their knowledge or their land or their business. I think that really what we're just trying to do is make nature accessible and create a community, because I think this is one thing where in such a polarizing world that there's so many different types of people that can come together and appreciate nature and the world, and the fact that it's really cool that we can go out here and unwind and maybe find something that can make us have a good experiment in our kitchen or feed our family. So you're always rolling the dice a little bit when you forage. There are certain things you can look for with the weather and the areas that you're at. We'll go right over here. That are going to make it more likely that you'll find something. But there's always that element of chance, kind of like with fishing and hunting or anything else in nature. So I'm gonna go ahead and get down right here. Notice I've got my hiking boots on. I've got this bucket right here with some holes in it. Ideally, like a burlap sack or something with holes even in the bottom is nice for mushrooms in particular, because then you can spread the spores, seeds, anything like that. I've got a pocket knife back here in case I need to actually cut anything off physically. So I'm thinking there's some water right here. I'm actually gonna go right over here. You've always got, you're going off the beaten trail when you're foraging a lot of times. So, you know, you're gonna get a little bit more in the thick of it than you do on normal hiking. So a lot of those rules, like you'll see I'm wearing a bandana right now. That is to, since I'm going around all this stuff, protect my scalp from bugs or ticks or anything falling on my head, little debris stuff. As we go into right here, we'll see, this is actually one that is not edible, but has some relatives that are. What we have right here, you can see how it's kind of gelatinous. This is called pale jelly roll. So this is one of those things where regions are important, because there is a pale gelatinous mushroom like this that grows in China that is traditionally used in their medicine for centuries for longevity. However, our American lookalike over here isn't edible. We do have edible varieties of jelly. One thing when you're starting out that you'll begin to notice is there's different families of mushrooms. We've actually got a couple families around here, so I can kind of break them down. But you'll see that there's a lot of jellies, so you're gonna have lots of different colors of jellies. Some are edible, some are inedible. None that I know of are really toxic, but you know, don't quote me on that. There's a lot of mushrooms in the world. You'll see that these ones go directly off of this old hardwood. Here is a bigger, more mature version for it. So there's a relative of this one called witch's butter that is edible. And I have made almost like an alternative to gummy bears with them before, the witch's butter, where you can kind of put them in like a simple syrup and dehydrate them a little bit, and they've got like the exact consistency of like a gummy or something like that. So that's a little fun snack you can do. And likely, since this log has this on here, it will be coming back year after year, unless for some reason it was to all be taken before it was able to have its spores released. Then the cool thing about mushrooms and the science with it is there's so many things that they have not discovered yet. and mushrooms that have not been studied yet. Same thing for plants, that there are a lot of things that just might not be, we might not know they're edible, or they might need to be prepared a certain way that we haven't figured out, or there might be medicinal benefits that haven't yet been researched. There's a lot of science and research going into some certain types of mushrooms right now, but who knows, 10 years in the future, we might have a whole new set that we've been looking over that we just didn't realize had these amazing properties that we just haven't been able to use yet. This right here, so just based on this kind of sturdy shelf appearance, and you will see these are definitely too mature, even if they were going to be an edible variety. I'm going to pick one and look underneath, and I see that there are pores on here instead of gills. So, you know, like our skin has pores, it's gonna have those little dots. These ones are bigger pores than our skin, obviously. But that right there is able to tell me what family this mushroom's in. Anything that's gonna have this like kind of firmer texture and go directly off of a root or wood and has those pores underneath is going to be in the polypore family. The cool thing about the polypore family is there's nothing in the family that is toxic. The reason that some are considered edible and some are considered inedible is just the toughness of them. So this one I would say is definitely in the inedible realm. Also, the more mature they get, the more tough they get. So a lot of times finding that younger variety is going to be the best situation. Some polypores you guys might recognize would be chicken of the woods is one that a lot of people know about and forage for. It's really delicious. I found a really big flush of it in the Smoky Mountains this last weekend, and it was definitely growing by a creek and hardwood. So, you know, the one habitat for a polypore is usually a good habitat for a lot of other ones. As you can see the pores right there. These guys are pretty sturdy, so they stay on things for a while. They can provide homes for lots of different bugs. And yeah, they got that spongy texture, pretty hard to tear, as you can see. I'm always looking at like decomposing, fallen down tree branches or at the base of trees. You'll also see them in areas where there's a lot of fallen wood on some of the branches. There are certain ones where you're going to kind of see them peeking out of the leaves. But for this season, I'm really looking mostly for stuff on wood. What you look for is going to depend seasonally too. So for example, a lot of people love morels, so that's a spring mushroom. So that's not going to be around right now. Right now you're going to be looking for things like hen of the woods, chicken of the woods. You can do some of your early like black staining polypores. It's going to be not really the right season for chanterelles right now or anything like that. So if you're seeing orange, it's really going to be like on those trunks or decomposing wood are going to be some of the big ones. Oyster season too. Oysters are a huge one. That's probably one of the first mushrooms I foraged was an oyster. And those are really easy to prepare. So that's something we could find today too. It's really good weather for oysters right now. So we'll start with the family. I immediately know that this is going to be in the Trametes group. It's a Trametes species. and that is the Latin name. The most well-known of the Trametes is going to be turkey tail. Turkey tail is one of those ones that is a little harder to identify from other species of Trametes. However, the great thing about this one is I still recommend it as a one for beginners to attempt, because no Trametes are toxic. So the worst thing that's going to happen to you if you misidentify it and put it in your tea is your tea just kind of tastes like mushrooms, you know? So no harm, no foul on Trametes. So one of the things you're going to look for with those is tiny, tiny pores, 3 to 8 pores per millimeter, actually. You're going to look for a white edge always. All Trametes are going to be pored for the most part, but they're not going to necessarily be smooth and small pored like that. On the front, you're going to look for varieties of texture. So you'll see that some of these have almost velvet-like lines in them. You're also going to look for true color differentiation, which this one is kind of lacking in my opinion. So for this one, this is one where, as far as I can tell from here without looking at extra resources yet, I would identify this as turkey tail. So you're saying, well, that doesn't sound like a very definite answer, Leanne. It's not. So what I would do then is, since I am fairly certain this is turkey tail, then I would take a piece, or depending on how confident you are, a section. This is one that grows pretty prolifically around here. You're not wanting to take, like, if you see one mushroom, don't take that one mushroom, especially if it's not mature, you know. There's a lot of speculation in the mushroom world on whether or not taking the fruiting bodies does do anything to the organism hurting wise, but you do need them to mature enough for them to release their spores, for them to continue to make more mushrooms in additional fruiting bodies. So back to turkey tail. I would take it and I can do a spore print test at home to verify that this is indeed turkey tail. So that's one thing I could do. Spore print test, you're going to take this piece and lay it gill or pore side down on a piece of paper. You're going to lay a glass on top of it and let it sit there for a good period of time. We're talking like 10 hours, like a while at least. Set it and forget it. Don't touch it. Don't move it. Then you are going to look at the spores and look up what turkey tail spores should look like. Readily available information that you can look up, but that is going to give you a color and usually a pattern that you're going to expect. So if these for some reason, you know, had white spore pattern and turkey tail is a black spore pattern, then I know right off the bat this was misidentified. Besides the spore print test, another way that you can help check that you have identified the right plant or mushroom is by using a book. So I've got a Missouri Mushrooms book. You're going to want your plant identification or mushroom identification books to be as specific regionally as possible. So I have a specifically Missouri Just Mushrooms book that I can look through. It's going to have your greatest chance of finding something that is in your area, or like a Midwest. I have things as specific as identifying hardwood trees in the winter as a book. The more specific you can find it, the more you're going to be able to really accurately identify that plant. And then the third thing I would recommend on making sure that you have the right plant is using people you know. So whether that is the 573 group, whether that is I will say there are, in terms of identification specifically, you can find a lot of groups on Facebook and online that are more specific, that it will be someone just for mushrooms in that area or plants in that area. So you can put it on one of those groups or multiple groups to try to get a group consensus, or someone that you know personally that you trust, that, you know, send them over a picture, let them see it in person. If you are doing a photo or picture method, there are things that you're going to want to really show them. You're going to want to tell them where you found it. You're going to want to take a picture of it on what it was growing, if possible, so that people can see that it was growing directly from these tree roots and not from dirt. You're going to want to take a picture of the underside of it, as well as the top and the side if you can. That's going to help with people knowing, you know, if there's pores or gills, how thin it is, if there's color differentiation. You're going to want to say if you found it that day or if you found it a couple months ago and it's an old picture, because time of year is also going to have an impact on what it is. So if we were foraging today, this would be a turkey tail find that I would be confident enough with that I would want to take some home and then further verify it. Turkey tail is one of the mushrooms that there is actually a fair amount of scientific research going into at this moment for its acts for cancer. So this is a really big one on in cancer research right now in terms of helping with cells not multiplying in certain ways. They're still trying to figure out why, but they're seeing some good results with that. It's also one that you're going to find in a lot of your mushroom powder blends that you find online. So what they're doing with that is they're picking it, or picking it off of their logs they grew. They are dehydrating it, whether that's air dry or in a dehydrator or on your oven with super low heat. And then they are putting it into a powder and encapsulating it. You also see it in like those mushroom coffees. I know it's kind of a thing right now. They're powdering this or the spores or some type of like substrate of it and putting it in there. So turkey tail, it's a good one. This is one of those ones where it's not going to be a meal. It's going to be more like your teas, kind of like a supplement kind of thing. So yeah. And I'm seeing something else here as well. Right here, late autumn boneset. You will find this in a lot of places. It just grows wild. It likes sun to partial sun. And this is actually one of those herbs that Native Americans in our area used to help with broken bones and bone healing. We don't fully know what they did for that with bone healing. Like, we know enough that it was named after it, honestly, but a lot of, whether it was a poultice or a tea or how exactly they used that is information that's lost to us a little bit now. They were brave. There's a lot of stuff that is toxic that they figured out you could prepare in certain ways. This would be another member of the Trametes, like turkey tail, but you will see that it is growing very different. So things that they have in common are, obviously it's thin, it's going directly on this dead wood, it doesn't have a stem, it meets its body right there on the wood. But if you look at the top, it looks very familiar too. It looks a lot like the other one, but then we get into differences and you can see that it doesn't have that little furry velvet layer like the last one did. And then as you flip it, you really almost don't see pores. It looks like it's just a paler variety of the front. You can't see those distinctive dots. So this is one where, is it medicinal? No, not that we know of. Is it gonna hurt you? No, it won't. And it's kind of so small that you're not gonna really feed your family with it. We all know Cape Girardeau is the city of roses. So I like to show you guys what some of our wild rose looks like. It is technically an invasive that was introduced, but it grows wild in this area at this point. It's very prolific. You will see it's got this distinctive leaf that you will find the same pattern on any rose that you see. Most plants of these that you're going to find in the wild you're just going to be the leaves and the thorns and the stem. However, When they get enough sunlight and they're in the right spot, they will grow flowers, and they will grow rosebuds. So this is one where I like to encourage people to forage it because the berries of the rosehip are going to contain the seeds. So that's how this plant spreads. It's invasive, so the best thing for us to do is to collect all those rosehips and eat them and put them in our tea. So I always encourage, when you see the thorns over here in this leaf pattern, look for these red berries that have a little thing on the top, almost like a pomegranate does. That little brown like crown almost on the top. And if I can find one, I'll show you. Those are nice too because they're pretty hardy and you can find them up until pretty late in the fall as well. But I love saving those for desserts or drying them and putting them in my tea. They kind of taste like nature's fruit roll-up, in my opinion, and they're the highest concentration of vitamin C in the plant kingdom, so also good for you. Always looking at the decomposing hardwoods, especially when it gets to fall and winter. I like to look a bit higher on the trees as well because chicken of the woods can be higher, as well as chaga mushrooms, which we do have in our area. We've got tons of the late autumn boneset over here. That's a really great pollinator for our bees and butterflies right now, when they have limited choices. We've got another variety of Trametes right here. And as you can see, like its cousin, the turkey tail, it is growing directly off of there. These are very fresh right now, but you'll often find them kind of dried and brittle. But then, and you look on the underside of this, it doesn't have gills per se, but those pores are almost elongated into like a shag carpet a little bit. So this one, we know it is in the family of the Trametes, but we know it's not turkey tail because of that underside. So it wouldn't be one that I would forage because you can't really eat it, and there's not any benefits that I know of to it for having it in tea or anything like that. But it's still a good find, and I always like being able to identify what family the thing is in. So this right here is a sassafras tree, and we've got some small ones sprouting up off of it that we can take a look at these leaves. This is sweet gum. So with sassafras, it is a native in our area. You probably have recognized it from the idea of sassafras and the root beer roots. One thing I love about this tree is you can use the roots for root beer, but you can also use the leaves for tea. That is supposed to be a natural mood booster. It's a really fun one to identify because it has 3 different leaf shapes. So you'll notice these ones on top have one single point, kind of rounded point, and then these right here are 3-lobed. And then let's see if we can find one. This guy right here is called a kitchen mitt. So he's got smooth side on there and then a lobe on this side. Here's another kitchen mitt for us. So all 3 varieties, kitchen mitt, single, and the 3-lobe. You can actually crush those up and rub them on your body, and they help as being a natural insect repellent as well. So very versatile tree. Okay, what do we have here? Now, we've had some days that are a little too hot, that have been upwards of 80 degrees. So you will end up seeing some of this kind of decomposing. But we've got some really fresh looking specimens right here. So we know it's got in the polypore family because of this underside, these pores. But this is one where it looks like it could be a member of the reishi family. Reishi, depending on who you are and what you ask. These ones I wouldn't use because, as you can see, ironically, this fungus is growing fungus. It has just been so damp and gotten a little too warm a couple days that these are not ideal specimens because of this. However, this is a really great find, and I definitely want to come back to this area to further see if more of these grow in the right conditions, because I think they will. I'm seeing a lot of them decomposing. This is another one that there is a ton of research going into medicinally, also in the field of cancer and memory retention as well. So these ones are supposed to help with energy, mental cognition, like help you stay sharp. This is one where we would dehydrate it and make it into a powder or slices for tea. With mushrooms, I will say with tea, you almost treat it more like an infusion. You're going to want to let it be in the water for a lot longer than you would for like your normal tea leaves or anything, because it takes a lot longer for this to really diffuse into the water compared to a leaf or something like that. So like the other ones, since this wasn't one that I run into that often around here, so I would want to take it home as well as take photos of it growing directly next to this tree. I would look and try to identify the tree that it is on, which this is a completely dead tree with a bunch of vines growing on it. But we know it is on some type of decomposing root or the tree. And then you're also going to take a picture of the underside, the top. And with these ones, I recommend cutting it all the way in half. Luckily, I have my foraging pocket knife on me. So the middle of this is also going to impact the identification on it. So this is one where I would want to get a spore print. I would want to consult other foragers. And also the fact that this is past its prime and is decomposing, that is going to affect this coloration. One dead giveaway for this family is that it's got this meaty layer, and then it has this layer that looks like tiny, tiny little lines, almost like whale's teeth is what it reminds me of. How when whales have krill, they've got those really tiny, almost toothbrush bristly looking teeth. This has got that as well at the bottom, which is a indicator that it is in the same family as reishi. So I would want to do some more research just to double check, since it's more of a mature specimen of it, but I strongly suspect this is checking all the boxes for me on what that would be. Identifying trees always really helps with mushroom hunting. So this one's a red maple right here. This would be considered a hardwood, which means that it takes a while to decompose. These are hardwoods are usually what we make furniture and everything out of. Any of the maples are the type that you can tap. So that's a fun thing to learn. Any maple you can tap? You can tap any maple at all. Sugar maples are the ones that are most common for tapping, but you can tap any maple at all. Its fun fact is you can actually tap like a lot of different trees in general. Birch trees are really great as a survival mechanism for tapping because they let their sap out a lot faster than other trees. So if you're stuck somewhere and you don't have anything to drink, you can tap a birch tree and literally like get fluid to survive. So that's the kind of fun aspect about learning these things. There's lots of different reasons why people come out here and learn the plants, whether it's survival or, you know, wanting to try something new in the kitchen or like be able to get their food really fresh, or just like the excitement of science and identifying things. A lot of kids, I think, kind of look at it as it's this big giant scavenger hunt in the forest. So a little bit of something for everyone with why they do it. One thing I love about going out here is there's always so much more to learn. Like, this is completely fascinating to me and I have no clue what that is at all. I am one of those people, I'm not afraid to tell you I don't know. There's so many things out here when it comes to plants, animals, mushrooms. There's so many different things you can specialize in. I mean, I know someone who went to school for moss. Like, that's what they do, moss. You can really get into so many different ways with it, and I think there's always something new to learn with it. I do like to use like a combination of technology and the old methods of being able to figure out new things. So I am not one that's like against trying to use like your Google search to get something in the ballpark kind of thing. But I use the rule of threes, so always use 3 sources to verify something if it's not something that you've repeatedly been able to identify before. So, you know, ask a friend, look at a book, and then try your plant app. If the consensus is for everyone, then you're feeling good. And there's so much that, I mean, has just been undiscovered in general out here. We're getting new versions of species all the time. We're getting things that didn't used to live here that live here now. So that's going to be a type of Trametes. So in the same family as turkey tail. And you will see this on so many things in our area. It is a really important part of the decomposition process. And a lot of people kind of compare it to lichen right here. And you can see right here, you have mushrooms growing out of lichen. This is another Trametes family, I believe. We'll check on our gills underneath. Yes, but not turkey tail, because you see how it's almost toothy, like a toothbrush. So lichen is not a fungus. It is its own group in itself. Lichen can actually grow completely on rock, no other thing. What's really cool about lichen is that if there's a fire in the area and everything is burnt up, it is the first thing to grow back. These right here are small pawpaw trees, and they will eventually grow upwards of probably 20 to 30 feet tall, depending on how much growth they get in this understory. The reason why you'll find that there's not just one random pawpaw tree here, but there are many, is because pawpaws grow in a grove. Usually that they will have one root system for all of these right here. So these are all trees that probably started from one pawpaw. These are going to be another one in the Trametes family. So you can see how the color really changes so much as they stay out here with the seasons. Since this is kind of a more sturdy mushroom, they don't just, turn back into soil very fast. They gradually lose color. They kind of flake a little bit like that. So you can see the difference between like the new growth versus the old growth. This is from the Trametes family, like our turkey tail. It's growing directly from here. It doesn't really have like a stem per se. It's coming straight out from here. And then you'll see that on the back we have no gills at all. It's very smooth. And why I know that this isn't turkey tail as well is that it doesn't really have different textures on the front. It's consistently has this velvet texture throughout. So that's a fun one that you can even find and identify in the winter, but it might start to look more like this a little bit more. This is good. And then this guy right here is really too small to tell. That could be some chicken of the woods. So you'll see this underneath side, it's kind of like yellow, and you'll see it's sturdy. It doesn't have gills, but it's still fresh feeling. You've got that wetness to it. This yellow color is a big giveaway for chicken of the woods. It's so small that this isn't something I would forage, but it's one where I would wait and come back. And as it grows and as it matures, you're going to be able to get a more positive ID from it. But chicken of the woods is considered a choice foraging mushroom edible. So that's one that it can grow big enough that people collect it to eat in their cooking. Obviously, a lot of people say it tastes like chicken of the woods, but it's a really versatile one. I know you can use it like you would with your portobellos or your mushroom caps, your button mushrooms. I think has a little bit more of a firmer texture to it. So I like to kind of let it sit in like a vegetable or chicken stock and saute it. Really good sauteed in butter. I know that that's one where, because of the fact that it's got that firmer consistency a little bit, people will make mushroom jerky out of it as well. So that's something that's cool to look at and fun. I've been experimenting with that some. There's a lot of polypores that are good for making mushroom jerky, but that's one that I would definitely love to come back and see as it grows. I would say that I would come back in about 5 days so you can kind of check it out.
Yeah.
And like we said earlier, one good thing is that if you find a certain type of mushroom in a location, if you find one, there's a good chance you're going to find other types or other mushrooms of that same type in that area, because something about it is really good for their growth. This is only about 10 feet from where we found that chicken of the woods, and that log just really covered in a lot of different Trametes. And my next thing I'm going to look for, it is a wet mushroom, so that tells me it's fresh. It tells me, kind of narrows down what species it would be in then, because there are certain species that are going to be dry to the touch. Then when we flip it, you'll see that it's got this spongy, almost like a air filter, kind of. You see like the little holes in there? Because at first glance, I was expecting this to be an oyster mushroom. As I'm looking further, I know it is a type of polypore because of the fact that instead of gills, it has this porous, kind of filter-like appearance down here. Now, it is soft. However, as you could see, I had to still use my knife. So that is another indicator that it's not an oyster. Oysters are really fragile and kind of rip apart easier. This would be, to my knowledge, it would be a black staining polypore. So there are a couple ways I can make this ID accurate. So as I'm handling it like this, we're gonna check back in on it in about 15 minutes and see if it's starting to bruise black in all the areas in which I'm handling it. That's gonna be a huge indicator. If it doesn't, the next one I would look for would be Berkeley's polypore. We take a look at that. I know that the black staining polypore you can make into food. It is gonna be, you're gonna want this young variety right here. I wouldn't consider the mature ones to be ones that you're gonna really wanna eat. So this one isn't necessarily considered a choice edible. However, it is one that I like a lot. I think the only reason it gets overlooked is because of the fact that it gets tough in that mature form. But these ones, you can saute them. I think that they make excellent jerky mushrooms because of the fact that they're sturdier, so they hold up whenever you're getting dehydrated and marinated and everything like that. But a lot of people kind of consider these types like their consolation prizes for foraging. So they're not gonna be your big talked about ones as much as like chanterelles or hen of the woods or your morels. But they, you know, I think they're good eating. And whenever people were doing this to really get sustenance and feed their family, a lot of times it's good to know and get creative on things that might take a little bit more preparation, but will still feed and nourish your family. I think it just got a little too hot this week because, you know, we want to stay in that 65 to 75 degree ratio. You get a little bit of leeway with that when you get in here in the woods because the trees, the canopy, the stream, it cools things down a bit. But we'll see right here that we've got some chicken of the woods. We talked earlier about how you'll often, if you find a variety of mushrooms someplace, to really scour the area around that because the spores could have inoculated or, you know, could have started growing on other nearby logs. And there's a good chance that you're going to find another type of mushroom or that same one. So we have some chicken of the woods right here. It is turning brown on top, which means that it's gotten a little too hot for them. It's rotting a little bit. However, what's great about, you know, foraging in an area you live is that once you found an area that has certain growth, even if you found it and it was too late in the time or didn't have ideal growth conditions, that mushroom's going to continue to grow in that area. So I can come back here again like in a month or next year at the same season, and I know I'm gonna have a good chance of finding some chicken of the woods. So you can see right here, and we've actually got multiple types of mushrooms on this log. That this is our chicken, and this is one of those things where, you know, nature has its own, I'm wrong. So this is great. At first I thought this was chicken because of this white right here, and I thought that it was turning brown right here because of all of the, you know, warm weather we've had, and that it was just rotting. But, you know, we had to take a closer look at this and look at all the different parts of it. And so then as I picked one off and flipped it, I realized this is definitely not the polypore I was thinking of, because chicken of the woods is going to be spongy throughout. But now that I've ripped this, I can see it's got that layer right there that's meaty, and then it has that layer that's like tiny bristles almost, which is indicative of the family that our reishi are in. And then you can see on the bottom how it looks so much. And this is one where I would definitely like to do a spore print and contact some more resources, because I think that this is hitting a lot of the signs for the reishi. The good thing about that family as well is that particular types of the reishi are what they have done the most studies on, but it could be that there is a benefit from all members of that family. Sometimes you find that there are varieties of mushrooms in your area that might not have even been discovered, but you can tell that they're from that family by the different attributes. So I will definitely have to do my research and let you guys know what I find out about this. It's probably, I'm assuming, like the old variety of this reishi family member we have. However, the way that it's growing definitely looks like chaga. They just have such different growth habitats. Chaga is a hard one because it doesn't look like a mushroom. It's a lot tougher, almost like corky. And also, typically you're going to see it more often than like fallen on trees. You're often going to see it in the trees. So that's one that it's a lot easier to find in the winter because you're able to see everything farther in the forest, but it's going to almost look like a knot on a tree. And there are only certain types of wood that it will grow on. But with that chaga, it's going to be this like, almost look like a burl, like an oak burl, but it's going to look like this, with this like, you know, chunky, earthy, almost peaty kind of thing, and then a regular sphere. Yeah, so there's such a different like feeling from foraging really than like hiking, because I feel like with hiking, a lot of it's like you're getting your blood pumping. It's the thrill of like, how far can I go? You're really there to look for like these big view spots and like kind of aha moments, where with foraging, you're kind of meandering along. It's much more of a detail-oriented experience. You know, you're kind of combing through the land and going off of the trail a lot more than you are on your typical hike. So it's always fun to get like excited and be like, okay, this is what this is, because it looks like it immediately, but you're going to want to look at the pictures of the underside. You're going to want to maybe post it on a group and double check yourself. And then you're also going to want to look and see, does this grow in Southeast Missouri? Does this grow in late September? I think that scientific names really do help with mixing up confusion, because sometimes two different plants or mushrooms can have the same kind of nickname, you know? And I definitely I would say what I use it the most is the species groupings for different types of plants and mushrooms, where, you know, I might be able to at least narrow down that plant or mushroom into whatever its species name is, or maybe not necessarily its epithet. So that can help then with really narrowing it down a lot easier, because you're not looking through just like all these different things.